Chapter 23. Jack couldn't see much from beneath the bed. The frilly quilt that covered the sides of the bed and subsequently hid them also did a great job of obscuring what was happening. All he could make out was a pair of black shoes stepping carefully through the open door of the cottage. "Who's there?" the owner of the shoes asked again quietly. Just as a thunderous noise exploded outside, the shoes immediately turned and ran toward the wall. No, to the window in the wall. "What is this?" the voice asked softly. Another huge crack, almost like a tree splitting in half, erupted outside the cottage. Philip, closest to the hood, looked over to Jack, then nodded. Philip wanted them to take the Red Hood by surprise. While she was distracted, Jack nodded back, then pushed himself toward the edge of the bed, shaking his head as he went. How had a nice normal boy like him gotten caught up in such an idiotic adventure? Jack grasped the edge of the bed, his hand on his sword, but he stopped. The sword would be too large if he planned on sneaking up on her. There was the knife, of course, but it wouldn't actually be able to hurt her. But maybe he didn't need to. With the beginnings of a plan, Jack reached into his bag and pulled out the knife. The shoes still seemed to be intent on whatever they were looking at out the window. But that wouldn't last for long. There weren't any further noises from the forest. So the wolf had given them all the distraction he could. Jack pushed himself out from under the bed, then grabbed the linens and pulled himself up so he could see over the top of the bed. Directly above the shoes stood, well, no one, yet someone was clearly in them. As Jack watched, whoever it was nervously lifted one foot, then the other. Even invisible, the Red Hood was panicking. Now or never. Without another thought, Jack threw himself forward, directly at the spot where the Red Hood should have been. Right above the black shoes, he smacked into something solid, something that screamed in surprise and fell over beneath him. Jack lifted the knife and slashed over and over at the invisible, screaming woman beneath him. He couldn't actually hurt her this way, but she didn't know that. Besides, though the knife couldn't cut flesh, it did cut something pretty important to her. Just as Jack hoped, everywhere he cut the Red Hood's cloak, the woman became visible. In fact, he quickly found himself lying on top of two arms and what looked to be a leg. Then the leg pushed its knee up into Jack's chest, kicking him back against the bed. As the knife flew from his grip, he marveled that his plan could both work so well and fail so miserably at the same time. "You got me!" the arms and legs screamed indignantly, rising into the air as if by magic. "I can't... Wait, I'm not... Whoop!" The last bit came as Philip yanked the Red Hood's visible leg out from under her and she crashed back down. As the Red Hood hit the cottage floor, May jumped up from the other side of the bed, grabbed the knife, and leapt at the hood. "Hold her down!" Philip shouted as he tried to get out from under the bed while still holding tightly to the Red Hood's exposed leg. May kneeled down on the Hood's arm and held the knife over what might have been the woman's neck. As she did so, the arms and legs stopped struggling. The princess must have put the knife against something important, neck or no. Jack carefully stepped past May and made his way to what he figured was the Hood's head. He reached down and felt around until he touched something woolly, then pulled on it. Instantly, the Wicked Queen's monster finally became visible. Only the woman on the ground wasn't some grotesque creature of the night. Instead, she was actually quite pretty, her eyes a deep blue, wide open with frightened anger as they flashed between Jack and May. Raven-colored hair flooded down the woman's back, while her well-lined face still managed to look young, especially in blue eyes. As he'd figured, a woolly cloth the Jack had pulled turned out to be the Hood's namesake. A red cloak that covered almost all of the woman's body, despite now having several large slashes in it. Beneath the cloak, the Hood was dressed entirely in crimson from her blouse to her silky pants. Apparently she had a thing for the color red. "Who are you?" the Red Hood demanded. "What do you want?" May shook her head. "Oh, no, lady," she said. "You are going to answer our questions. Where's my grandmother?" "Your what?" the Red Hood asked, sounding confused. "What are you talking about?" "Not good enough," May said, and she pushed the knife against the woman's throat. As May put on a threatening face, the Red Hood just looked more confused. "You know that doesn't hurt, right?" the Hood asked. "I do now that, yes," May said, a bit annoyed. She glanced down at the knife, then tossed it aside and yanked the Hood up by her tunic. "You have a mirror, so you have to know something," May yelled. "Tell me where my grandmother is." "You want to find your grandmother?" asked a voice from the door. As Jack spun around to see who'd spoken, something enormous flew through the open doorway and plowed into the four-poster bed, practically breaking it in half in the process. It was the Wolf King, and from where he stood, Jack couldn't tell if the animal was still alive. From the doorway, the huntsman smiled. "You could have just asked me, you know." "Oh, and Red, I took care of that little wolf problem you've been having." "You're welcome,"